Hi, my name is Grace Lewis, 35 years old. The night of my parents' 30th anniversary, I thought I'd finally belong. Crystal chandeliers glowed, laughter filled the hall, glasses clinked in celebration. Then my parents turned, faces cold, voices sharp enough to cut. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome." Every guest fell silent, eyes darting between us in disbelief. My chest locked, but I didn't cry, I didn't beg. Behind them, my younger sister smirked, basking in their approval. I forced a smile, whispered only one word. Understood. What came next made those words feel almost merciful. Have you ever been cut down by the very people meant to protect you? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear if you've felt this too. The older I got, the more invisible I became. Leaky roof? I hired the contractor and paid the bill. Mom's car died? I swiped my card without hesitation. Dad's medical copays? My paycheck took the hit again. I told myself that's family. Quiet sacrifice. Endless giving. Eventually, I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was an ATM. I earned 6 figures as a software engineer. But in our house, love was measured only in dollars. Every transfer met silence. Every problem landed on me. My younger sister's feed supplied the only glitter and laughter. She was the golden child, an influencer of filters, not facts. Behind the screen, her promises were as empty as her account. They bragged about her to neighbors while I funded their life. At 25, I paid Dad's $10,000 credit card. He said once. It became the rule. By 30, I covered copays, mortgage, even her phone bill. She rolled her eyes, called me a show-off, then posted Malibu sunsets. Mom murmured, "She's building her career." Dad, "Let her shine." As if my career were a hobby. When Mom asked for a 30th anniversary celebration, I said yes. I hoped this one time I'd finally be seen. My sister grabbed the wheel before I could breathe. Live band, imported flowers, a coastal resort, magazine perfect everything. Every demand ended the same way. "You've got this, right? 5,000 deposit, then catering, quartet, photo booth." Her vision, my bank account, her spotlight, my sacrifice. When I mentioned costs, they waved me off like static. "You're the responsible one, Grace. You can handle it." The script was familiar, and I obeyed it again. I bit my tongue and kept paying, because I still believed money could buy belonging. Looking back, the pattern should have been obvious. It wasn't family, it was control. And the night I tried to give them everything, they decided to take even more. I didn't know the party I built would stage my betrayal. I kept my head down and built their celebration anyway. If control was their language, I would speak it fluently. Each morning I called the resort. Layout, sound, linens, then code. My younger sister sent aesthetic notes between sponsored reels. Vegan option, spotlight, peonies not roses, always more, never money. Ask about budget and she replied, busy with collabs. Mom warned, don't upset her. Dad, you're reliable. Praise becomes a leash when it tightens every week. Then one number on a screen changed everything. Our repair fund should have held $20,000. The balance showed $5,000 in a blinking cursor. I pulled statements, pulse loud as a siren. Withdrawals lined up, boutiques, hotels, rideshare, car deposit, all on my sister's card tied to the account. 15,000 siphoned from money meant for our parents. I texted, "Explain the account." She answered, "Relax." I called the bank and asked about alerts. Alerts go to all authorized users, including your parents. They had watched it vanish in real time. I called home, listed dates and amounts. "She's borrowing," Mom said. "Don't make drama," Dad added. They wanted quiet more than they wanted truth. I swallowed the apology reflex and hung up. That night, a message arrived from an old name. Sheila Ramsey, my sister's former friend, asked to meet. At a harbor cafe, she slid over a folder. Screenshots, promises, excuses, vanishings, receipts for spa weekends and a leased BMW deposit. Highlighted bank lines matched what I had traced. She lent $2,000? Never repaid, Sheila said, tapping dates. I tracked her because she tried to borrow again. It wasn't a slip. It was practiced extraction. Next morning, the bank confirmed every transfer. Recent, repeated. And yes, my parents got the alerts and never responded. I drove the coast with the windows down for air. The party was weeks away. Deposits sat with vendors. If I detonated now, I'd be the villain again. So I finished the job I had started. Checked up lights, renegotiated fees, padded the timeline. I wasn't leaving quietly. I was choosing where to stand. I flagged a meeting with Emily, the resort manager, just in case. I printed statements and slid them into a folder. Added Sheila's screenshots and a plain cover sheet. No speeches, no theatrics, just dates and signatures. I set the folder by my door like armor. When the night came, I wouldn't be empty-handed. If love refused truth, I would choose truth. She wasn't done with me yet, but neither was I. I checked lights, microphones, seating, every chair on my card. Then my parents met me at the entrance, faces hard. "You're not supposed to be here," Mom said. "You're not welcome." Conversations stalled. Silverware froze. The reflex rose. Apologize. Fix. Disappear. I pressed it down. "Is that what you think?" My younger sister floated in, smile camera ready. "She's jealous," she told the room. "She's spreading lies about me. Lies need air." I opened the doors and let truth breathe. I nodded toward the lobby. A dark blazer stepped forward. Sheila arrived, calm, a folder under her arm. Color drained from my sister's face. We moved to the center where the band would play. "Sheila," I said, "tell them why you're here." She opened the folder on a cocktail table. Bank statements, screenshots, receipts. 15,000 from the family account, she said. Hotels, boutiques, a BMW deposit. Dates match withdrawals. I lent her 2,000. She never repaid. Phones appeared from every direction, recording without blinking. My mother reached for the folder, then stopped. "This isn't the place," she hissed. "We'll discuss later." "We discussed it when alerts hit your phones," I said. "You saw and told me to let it go." My father's jaw set. "Keep your voice down." My sister tried to laugh it off. "She's bitter," she said. "She's always had it out for me." Sheila didn't flinch. "Dates, times, amounts," she said, tapping ink. "Want me to read them, or put them on the wall?" The quartet fell silent. A server froze mid-tray. "This is harassment," my sister cried. "You're ruining their night." I met her eyes. "You did that when you stole." I faced my parents. "You wanted perfect," I said. "I gave you a roof, a table, 100 chairs. You chose a spotlight for a lie." My mother pivoted to bargains. "Keep it in the family." "We already did," I said. "That's why it grew." There's a line between protection and complicity. You crossed it. My father stared at the folder. "It's complicated." "It's itemized," I said. "You called my boundaries complicated." For once, I let silence speak. The story had new authors, dates, signatures, totals. My sister searched our parents' faces and found a mirror. Phones kept filming. The lie had an audience now. I closed the folder. The click was a lock. This was both survival and shedding old skin. The music hadn't started. Masks were off. I wasn't here to clap. I was here to cut the power. I found the manager. "Emily," I said, "remove my card." She didn't argue. "No payment, no party," she said, dialing vendors. Quartet cases snapped. Catering packed. My mother rushed over. "You're ruining our night." "I funded it," I said. "Then you threw me out." Dad gripped my arm. "Fix this, Grace." I faced the room. "You watched me pay while she stole. Alerts hit your phones. You chose silence." My younger sister lunged for the folder. Security moved. Emily lifted a calm hand. "Return the documents," she said. The folder thumped. "She's lying," my sister cried. "A vendor with a clipboard. Balance is due, 10,000. The contracts list her as point of contact," Emily said. My sister went pale. "This is harassment." "It's paperwork," Emily replied. "Notices go to the signer." Around us, the party unraveled. The photo booth died mid-pose. Servers slipped away. I exhaled with the ocean. Mom tried the soft tactic that once hooked me. "You don't have to do this," she pleaded. "People will talk for years." "Let them," I said. "Maybe they'll finally say my name." Dad softened. "We can fix this after dinner." "After the bill? After the next withdrawal?" I asked. "How many alerts equal a daughter to you?" He had no answer. My sister switched to apology. "Grace, I was overwhelmed. Brands were about to sign. I was going to pay it back." "All those brands," I said. "Yet somehow always my card." "I'm your sister," she whispered. "And I was your cover." I faced the guests to finish, not to humiliate. If you wondered who handled emergencies, hi. I did quietly for years, told to keep it quiet. That silence protected a thief and punished the payer. Emily said, "Without payment, we're shutting down." Music faded to a hum, then nothing. The ocean took over, low and constant. My parents shrank when the crowd lost interest. Mom searched my face for softness and found a locked door. At the entrance, I turned. "To be clear," I said, "I'm done funding this family. No more shared accounts. No more loans. No more lies. If you need money, call the person who stole it. A ripple moved through the room at that line. I gave Emily my contact for notices. Then I faced my sister one last time. You built a life on borrowed glitter, I said. It shines until the lights belong to someone else. Tonight, the lights went dark. I had cut the music. Now I was ready to cut the cords too. The next morning, I chose something I had never chosen. Me. I closed the shared account and froze lingering access. Autopays were canceled. The leaks in my life stopped. Then I booked therapy and kept every appointment. Guilt loosened its grip like a knot learning to breathe. I rerouted money toward my future instead of bandages. An emergency fund, a weekend trip, quiet joy without apology. It felt strange to buy a lamp and not a lifeline. I slept through the night for the first time in months. Peace sounded like a refrigerator and nothing else. Consequences found the right doors without my help. Vendors sent notices to the signer on the contracts. 10,000 in unpaid services, itemized and stamped. My younger sister tried apologies, then silence. Brands backed away. Her numbers fell. My parents tried another round of, for the sake of family. They wanted the old fixer with the bottomless wallet back. I didn't slam the door. I left it unlocked. But I changed the rules. No money. No crisis by phone. No meetings without respect. No talk that erases truth. On Sundays, I hiked the bluffs and let wind file me down. I learned the coastline's names like I once learned invoices. Sheila and I met for coffee and planned next steps. Not revenge, not spectacle. Boundaries that hold in weather. Strength isn't hardness. It's choosing where to bend. Work felt lighter when it was mine to carry. I led a release, mentored a junior, used vacation days. I framed a photo of the ocean that was only water. The smile in it finally belonged to me. My family didn't break in one night. I won't pretend it did. But I stopped paying to keep a story alive that kept me small. If love refuses truth, I'll choose truth and let love learn. If they want me back, they can come with honesty, not invoices. I'll open the door when respect knocks, not obligation. If you're carrying the whole house on your back, hear me. You're allowed to put it down today. Boundaries aren't betrayal. They're how we stay kind longer. You don't have to buy your way to belonging. You don't have to bleed to be believed. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family? Share what changed for you in the comments. Someone needs your map. Before saying goodbye, if this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories. That reminds us we are stronger than we think.
I hadn't been back to the Moreland estate in over a year, yet the place looked like something torn from a glossy magazine spread. Every inch gleamed fresh paint on the grand columns, polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers casting golden light across the ballroom. It was the kind of opulence meant to impress the city's oldest families. And it worked. Laughter and polite applause floated over the hum of the string quartet. I stood near the far wall, as far from the spotlight as possible. The beige silk dress Vivian had chosen for me hung stiff against my frame, the fabric cool and unyielding. Understated elegance. She'd called it when she dropped it off at my apartment. I knew what she really meant. Don't stand out. Don't give anyone a reason to remember you were here. Selena moved through the crowd with practiced grace. Her hand looped through her husband's arm. They looked like they belonged on the cover of some society wedding issue, all charm and synchronized smiles. I caught her eye once, but she quickly looked past me to greet an alderman's wife. It wasn't anger. Exactly, it was distance, the kind you build brick by brick until it feels permanent. Vivian floated nearby in a silver gown, her voice bright, her laugh sharper than it needed to be. She placed a possessive hand on my father's arm as she spoke to a small group, and I noticed how easily his expression bent to her cues. The same way it had for years, a waiter appeared at my side, offering a champagne flute. I took it without thinking, though I'd barely touched alcohol in months. The glass was cold against my fingers, the pale gold liquid catching the light as if it belonged here more than I did. I stayed near the edge of the crowd, sipping slowly, watching my family hold court in a house that used to feel like mine. The music swelled for the next toast, and I felt the urge to leave the room, to slip into one of the quiet hallways where the noise couldn't follow. I told myself I just needed air, a moment away from the perfect, suffocating picture. I didn't yet realize that a single step out of the ballroom would change everything. I let one of my father's cousins corner me near the dessert table. She was mid-story about her new lake house when it hit subtle at first, just a faint drift in my balance. Then the edges of the room softened, the chandelier lights blurring into hazy halos. I tightened my grip on the champagne flute. Though I hadn't even finished half of it, I'd been careful, sipping slowly, spacing each taste between long pauses. This wasn't alcohol. I knew my body well enough to tell the difference. The cousin's voice faded into the background, the words flattening into sound without meaning. My pulse thudded in my ears. I forced a smile, murmured something about checking on the coat room, and stepped away. The floor felt uneven beneath my heels as I moved through the crowd, careful not to draw attention. My eyes darted once toward Vivian still holding court, laughter bright and flawless as if nothing in the world could shake her. I set the glass down on a passing waiter's tray. The stem slipped from my fingers easier than it should have. The cool air from the hallway beyond the ballroom brushed my skin, and I followed it like a lifeline. The noise dimmed with every step into the back corridor. My breathing slowed, though the odd fog in my head lingered. I told myself it was nothing a skipped lunch, the heat from the crowd, but the thought didn't land. That last sip had tasted slightly bitter, almost metallic. I reached the end of the hall, one hand against the wall for balance, trying to steady myself before anyone saw. The kitchen doors swung open just ahead, releasing a burst of clattering dishes and the smell of butter and herbs. I stepped toward them, hoping for a chair, maybe a glass of water. Instead, someone was waiting for me. The clatter of pans and low hum of kitchen chatter filled the space, a stark contrast to the curated elegance of the ballroom. I barely had time to scan the room before a man stepped away from a stack of folded linens and crossed to me. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that caught and held mine. His voice was steady, pitched low so it wouldn't carry. Celine Moreland. I hesitated. Yes, I'm Leon Weller, he said. Security for the venue tonight, but years ago. I worked for Moreland and Associates, your mother's firm. Something in my chest tightened at the mention of my mother. But before I could ask, he leaned in slightly, the weight of his words deliberate. Vivian put something in your drink. I saw it. I stared at him, the kitchen noise dulling to a hum. What? She slipped a small capsule out of her clutch, dropped it in, gave it one stir, and it dissolved. Looked like nothing happened, but I've been in this line of work long enough to know what I saw. My pulse quickened. You're sure I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't, he said. Then, as if sensing my instinct to run, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. If you can. Switch glasses. Make it look like an accident, but don't drink from yours again. Whatever's in there. It's not for celebration. I took the card. The embossed letters felt heavier than paper should. Why are you telling me this? Because I knew your mother, he said simply, and she'd want someone watching your back. He didn't wait for me to answer, just gave a short nod and moved toward the service hallway, disappearing into the hum of the kitchen. I stood there, gripping the card, my mind a knot of disbelief and clarity. Leon's words had stripped the party of its pretense. Somewhere in that glittering ballroom, my stepmother was smiling, certain she'd already won. I turned toward the doorway, ready to find my way back. The noise of the ballroom hit me like a wave when I stepped back through the double doors. For a moment, it felt unreal, people laughing, crystal glasses catching the light, the quartet's gentle music wrapping it all in a picture-perfect frame. I tightened my grip on Leon's card in my palm before slipping it into my clutch. Vivian stood across the room, her profile angled toward a photographer. She tilted her head just enough to show the silver earrings that matched her gown. Lips parted in a practiced laugh. My father hovered beside her, beaming at something the man behind the camera had said. My gaze fell to the table in front of them. 2 champagne flutes sat side by side, the stems catching the light. They were nearly identical, down to the fine bubbles clinging to the glass. My own flute, the one Leon had warned me about, waited innocently near my chair. The path between us felt impossibly long, but the crowd gave me cover waiters moving with trays, guests shifting in conversation. I reached my table as if I were simply returning from the restroom, sliding into place without pause. Vivian was still laughing, leaning toward the photographer. I rose again almost immediately, lifting both glasses in one smooth motion, as though I couldn't remember which was mine. My heart thudded in my ears. I set one down in front of my seat, the one I'd taken from Vivian's place, and carried the other to her side. "Here," I said lightly, placing it in front of her. She didn't even glance at me, just murmured a distracted thank you before turning back to the lens. I returned to my seat, resting my hands loosely in my lap, outwardly. I was calm, composed, another guest enjoying the evening, inside. My pulse was a drumbeat, each thud counting down to whatever would happen next. I lifted my gaze toward the head table just as my father stood, tapping his glass for attention. The clinking of glassware rippled through the room as my father rose, his hand resting on the back of Vivian's chair. His voice carried with the easy authority of a man used to attention. He spoke about love, loyalty, and legacy, weaving phrases he'd used at every anniversary celebration I could remember. Vivian sat beside him, her posture perfect, her smile fixed. Then, almost deliberately, she reached for the champagne flute I'd placed in front of her. She lifted it with the poise of someone about to seal a performance, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on me. It was the smallest flicker of a smile, confident, certain, that passed over her face before she tilted her head and drank. I held her gaze, not blinking. The toast continued, applause starting around the room, but something in Vivian's expression shifted. Her smile twitched, then froze. The hand holding the glass trembled slightly before the stem slipped from her grip. It hit the floor and shattered, sending golden liquid across the parquet. She swayed once, as if the room had tilted beneath her, and my father's hand darted toward her shoulder before he could steady her. She crumpled. The fall wasn't graceful. Her knees hit first, then her side, and she landed in a heap, breath sharp and shallow. The room erupted. Selena pushed past a table of guests, her gown catching on a chair leg. Waiters stumbled with trays. Silverware clattered. Someone shouted for an ambulance. A chorus of voices rose, all layered with confusion and alarm. I stayed in my seat, my hands folded neatly in my lap. My pulse was steady now. I knew exactly what had just happened. That glass had been meant for me, and now, under the bright lights of the ballroom, in front of more than 100 witnesses, Vivian was the one gasping for breath. My father knelt beside her, calling her name, his voice cracking. Selena hovered close, pressing a napkin into Vivian's hand even though it was useless against whatever was in her system. The sound of sirens grew louder outside, a thin wail that cut through the chaos. Red and blue light began to flash against the tall windows as the paramedics approached. The police arrived before the last shard of glass was swept from the floor. Uniformed officers moved through the crowd, guiding guests toward the foyer to take statements. I stayed where I was until a woman in a dark blazer approached, her badge catching the light. "Detective Mara Keene," she said, her tone measured. She took a seat across from me, flipping open a small notebook. Her eyes lingered a second too long on my face, as if searching for something. "You don't seem rattled," she observed. "I process things differently," I replied, keeping my voice even. She asked where I'd been sitting, how close I was to Vivian, whether I'd noticed anything unusual. I answered carefully, neither volunteering nor denying. When she thanked me and moved on, I could feel her watching me even as she spoke to the next guest. The next morning, my phone rang. The number was blocked. "This is Detective Keene," the voice said. "We'd like you to come in. At the station." The walls were the color of wet sand, the air faintly metallic. Keene sat across from me with a folder closed between her hands. "We got the toxicology report," she began. "Scopolamine, small dose, but enough to cause disorientation. Fainting, possible memory loss, in higher amounts. Worse." I met her gaze. "I believe it." Her brow lifted. "You believe it?" "Yes, because I was supposed to drink that glass." The room seemed to pause. "Explain," she said. I told her about Leon Weller, the warning in the kitchen, and how I'd switched the glasses. I didn't dress it up. I let the facts stand. She listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. "That's a serious accusation," she said finally. "If it's true, it changes everything." I leaned back in the chair. "It is true." Her fingers tapped the folder once, then stilled. "Then we'll need more than your word." I already knew where I'd get it. 2 months before the anniversary party, an envelope arrived at my apartment. The return address was from an old brick building in downtown Savannah, my mother's attorney's office. I hadn't heard from them since her estate had been settled, so the sight of their letterhead pulled something tight in my chest. Inside was a single-page letter and a photocopy of a legal document. The letter explained that while reviewing archived files, they'd come across a clause in my parents' prenuptial agreement. I scanned the dense paragraphs until my eyes caught on the part that changed everything if my father remarried. His new spouse would be barred from inheriting anything connected to my mother's assets, her properties, investments, or residual trusts. Those rights would pass directly to me. I read it 3 times, barely breathing. It wasn't just protection, it was a locked door with my mother's name on the key, and Vivian had been standing on the other side for years, assuming the door would open for her. I didn't tell anyone, not at first, but a week later. I made a call to an old family friend, asking questions I thought were private. I should have known better. Conversations in my family never stayed in one place. Soon after, the invitations began. Dinner at the estate, brunch with just the girls, even Selena's anniversary party events I'd been excluded from for years. Vivian started complimenting my clothes, my hair, my poise. It was too much, too sudden, and too obviously rehearsed. She hadn't softened toward me. She'd adjusted her aim. The night of the party, when she handed me that beige dress, she was smiling as though she'd finally decided to let me in. But the truth was sharper than that. Vivian wasn't opening a door, she was building a trap. And by the time I saw it for what it was, I was already standing in the middle of it. Vivian didn't waste time. 3 days after the party, a glossy local lifestyle blog ran an exclusive interview with her. The headline called her a pillar of the community who had been targeted by her troubled stepdaughter. The article quoted her at length how she'd suffered a frightening medical episode, how she'd always tried to welcome me despite my resentment over her marriage to my father. She never mentioned the toxicology report. She never mentioned Leon. And she certainly didn't mention the clause in the prenup. The comments were brutal. People who'd never met me filled the thread with armchair diagnoses, accusing me of jealousy, greed, and worse. It was the kind of public narrative Vivian excelled at: polished, emotional, just believable enough for people who wanted a villain. That evening, my phone rang. Leon's name lit the screen. "I got something," he said without preamble. Pulled the kitchen footage from the security archive before it could be wiped. Within the hour, he was at my apartment with a flash drive. The video was grainy but clear. Vivian standing at the bar, glancing over her shoulder, pulling something from her clutch and dropping it into a glass. One stir, and it vanished. There was more, a clip of her leaning toward a server, whispering something before he hurried off. Leon told me the man hadn't returned after the collapse. No one had been able to contact him. "This isn't just speculation anymore," Leon said. "It's proof." I knew better than to take it to the same outlets Vivian had charmed. Instead, I called a small independent journalist I trusted. I gave her the footage, the timestamps, and Leon's statement. By the next morning, the video was online. No commentary, No sensational headline, just the truth, frame by frame. And within hours, the tide began to turn. By the second day, the video had spread beyond Savannah. The tone of the whispers shifted, less gossip, more condemnation. 2 nonprofit boards quietly removed Vivian's name from their rosters. A boutique she co-owned scrubbed her photo from its website. Her smile, once currency, had turned into a liability. My phone rang late in the afternoon. My father's voice was strained, stripped of the easy warmth he reserved for public moments. "Celine, we need to talk. Tomorrow. At the house." When I arrived, the air inside felt colder than I remembered. Vivian wasn't there. My father sat at the dining table, a folder in front of him. "She's gone," he said. "Left last night. I don't know where. I didn't sit. Here's what I want. A public acknowledgement of the truth. Vivian out of my mother's house, and every asset tied to her estate returned to me without delay." He looked at me for a long moment, then opened the folder. Inside were signed transfer documents, restoring my legal claim to the properties, investments, and trust my mother had built. "You win," he said quietly. "I should have protected you. It wasn't an apology. It was a statement of fact, offered too late to matter." I took the folder, the weight of it solid in my hands. "You could have," I said. His eyes flickered downward. "What happens now is up to you." I didn't answer. I had what I came for, and the rest, how the story would end, was already taking shape. Within a week, the keys to my mother's house were back in my hand. The first thing I did was walk through every room, opening the drapes to let the light in. I pulled family photos from storage and set them back on the mantels where Vivian had replaced them with her own. The garden, choked with weeds under her watch, was cleared and replanted, bit by bit. I returned the house to what it had been, a place that belonged to us, not her. Weeks later, Selena came by. She stood in the doorway, eyes flicking over the restored photographs and the blooming roses outside. She didn't step far inside. Her voice was soft, uncertain. "I don't know what to believe anymore." I didn't argue. Belief was her burden, not mine. After she left, Leon called. "She's keeping a low profile," he said. "No board seats, no public appearances. The people she counted on aren't returning her calls." I thanked him. He didn't ask for details about what I'd do next, and I didn't offer any. There were no press statements, no interviews. I didn't post triumphant photos or leak new rumors. I let the footage, the documents, and the silence do their work. The damage was already in motion, and nothing I could say would make it sharper. Some victories don't need applause. I sat on the back porch one evening, the scent of fresh soil in the air, and watched the light fade over the garden my mother planted. The house was mine again. But more than that, it was safe. I'd survived. And that, more than any headline or public reckoning, was enough. I was 25 the first time I paid my parents' mortgage. It was a Friday, I remember, because I had just finished work and was about to drive up to the coast for a weekend I'd been planning for months. Then Mom called. Her voice was tight, careful the way it always got when she needed something but didn't want to ask directly. "We're a little behind," she said just this once. It wasn't just once. The coast trip got canceled. I wired the money. And that was the beginning of the version of me they came to rely on, dependable, quiet, always a step ahead of the next crisis. When Dad needed emergency dental work and their insurance didn't cover it, I paid. When the hot water heater exploded the winter after Sable quit another job, I covered the plumber and groceries in the same week. I didn't even flinch anymore. It was just what I did. Meanwhile, Sable floated. One minute she was launching a smoothie blog, the next she was in LA selling handmade dog collars or posting vague modeling photos captioned with song lyrics. She changed cities the way some people change shoes. She never had enough money, but she always had a way of making everything about her look fun, untouchable, carefree. They never asked her to help. I used to think that was just how family worked. Everyone plays a role. Mine was being the fixer, I earned more, so I gave more. I was stable, so I absorbed the chaos. Sable called it Alara always being Alara like that explained everything, and I let her. I didn't need praise. I wasn't looking for recognition. But deep down, I guess I thought that meant something. That love looked like showing up. That the quiet, keeping everything together kind of care would be seen eventually. But it wasn't. And the day I realized that was the day I picked up a folder I was never meant to see. Dad had finally admitted he was overwhelmed. Too many papers piling up, too many bills slipping through the cracks. So I came over one Saturday with my scanner and laptop ready to help. He muttered thanks and turned on the news. I sat at the dining room table, sipping lukewarm coffee, sorting through faded envelopes and paperwork so old it smelled like mildew. It felt routine until I saw the label. A red tab marked estate plan, tucked behind utility receipts and bank statements like it didn't matter. I hesitated. I'm not someone who snoops. But something in me, intuition dread, maybe just exhaustion, told me to open it. So I did. The first page listed their names. The next, a summary of assets, the house, the savings, the car, the life insurance. Then came the allocations. Every single item, every bit of what they had was assigned to Sable. All of it. My name showed up once. One line near the bottom. We leave our love and gratitude to both our daughters. That was it. No note, no letter, no special item, no mention of the years I'd helped them stay afloat. Just love and gratitude. Generic. Weightless. I blinked at the page, then read it again, slower this time. It didn't change. Every room I helped repair, every loan I quietly repaid, they were invisible here. I was invisible here. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat still, fingers pressed against the table like bracing for a tremor. Sable, the girl who once used their car to chase a DJ across 3 states who borrowed my credit card and ghosted me for 2 months, was the one they had chosen. Not because she'd earned it, but maybe because she never stayed long enough to disappoint them. Dad walked in with a refill of coffee, still half watching the news. "You still scanning those papers, Elle?" he asked. I held up the will. "Did you mean for me to see this?" He paused, just for a second, then sighed. "College," he said. That was all. I stood up, closed the folder, and realized I'd been erased by people who still used my name. The next Saturday, I didn't go to their house. I didn't remind them about the thermostat settings or refill their prescriptions online or double-check that the gas bill had been paid on time. I just stayed home. Sunday came and went, then Monday. Still nothing. No text, no call. Not even a passive-aggressive emoji from Sable. By Thursday, it became harder to tell if I was more hurt or more numb. I kept staring at my phone like it owed me an apology. It didn't blink. Neither did they. At work, I must have looked worse than I felt because Rhea stopped by my desk mid-morning, quietly sliding a granola bar next to my laptop. "You've barely touched your lunch," she said. "Want to come walk with me later?" I nodded, grateful for her presence. Rhea was never nosy, just observant in the way that people who've been through something often are. We walked around the block twice before she finally asked, "You okay?" I told her about the will. Not everything, just enough. She didn't gasp or offer advice. She just let it settle between us. Then, after a few seconds, she said, "You know you don't owe them survival, right?" It was such a simple sentence. It landed somewhere beneath my ribs like a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That night, I went home and left my phone on the kitchen counter. I cooked for myself. I lit a candle. I watched a documentary about sea otters for no reason at all, and I didn't check for messages because I already knew. The only thing louder than their silence was the clarity it gave me. They hadn't noticed I was gone because they'd never really seen me in the first place. 3 weeks later, the silence finally broke with a text about the heater. It had been 22 days since I left their house. Not that anyone was counting except me. I hadn't called, hadn't shown up, hadn't reminded anyone about auto-pay deadlines or prescription refills. And in all that time, I received nothing but silence. Until the text came through. "Darren, hi, sweetheart. Heater's acting up again. Can you check before the weekend, thanks?" No mention of the will. "No, how are you?" Just an expectation wrapped in a nickname. I stared at it for a full minute, then typed call someone else. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then a second message came, not from her, but from Callan. Callan, don't be dramatic. We didn't think you needed anything from the will. You've got your life together. That made me laugh out loud, the kind of laugh that comes from someplace bitter and exhausted, as if being responsible disqualified me from being acknowledged, as if competence meant I was ineligible for care. I didn't reply. But a few hours later, Sable did. Sable, you're acting weird. This isn't a big deal. That one made my chest tighten. Because if it wasn't a big deal, then what was I? I looked at the message, then typed slowly. Then pay the mortgage. She answered instantly. Girl, I can't afford that. That's your thing. My thing. The roof over their heads, the groceries in their fridge, the holiday lights that still flickered on a timer every evening because I had bought and programmed them. All of it my thing, and yet none of it had earned me even a footnote in their future. That night, I opened my banking app and paused the auto transfer for their utility bill. The next morning, I opened the group chat with my parents and hit leave conversation. It was time to stop pretending they didn't make a choice, and time to show them I could too. 3 days later, they showed up at my door. I was halfway through a cup of reheated coffee when the front desk called. Hi, Ms. Winslow. There are 2 people downstairs saying they're your parents. They're asking to come up. My heart didn't drop. It hardened. I didn't invite anyone, I said. I understand. They said it's urgent. They look determined. Please don't let them up. Got it, the man said, hesitating. But they're not leaving. I stood there for a few minutes, then grabbed my keys and walked down. They were waiting just outside the glass doors of the building. Mom, in a tailored coat pearl earrings, her expression pulled tight in rehearsed fragility. Dad looked tired, arms crossed, saying nothing, and Sable stood beside them like an extra witness to their performance. I opened the door just wide enough to step into the frame. No further. Mom stepped forward immediately. Sweetheart, we just need 5 minutes. That's all? I didn't move. No, I said, voice steady. You need money. That's all. Her face flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Neither is leaving your daughter out of your will, I said. Let's call it even. Dad's jaw flexed. We didn't come here to argue. No, you came to make me feel guilty enough to keep paying your bills. I paused. But I'm not doing that anymore. Ask Sable. Sable scoffed. Don't drag me into this. You're already in it, I snapped. You got the house, the savings, everything. So why am I still the one expected to fix what breaks? No one answered. I folded my arms. You raised me to believe family was about love, but now I see it was about leverage. And now that you have nothing left to hold over me, you're panicking. Mom's lip trembled. Dad looked away. Sable muttered, You're being dramatic. I smiled faintly. No, I'm being done. I closed the door without another word. By Monday, they were already telling their version of the story online. It started with a vague Facebook post. Sometimes the child you raise with the most love is the one who forgets first. Beneath it, a photo from a family hike. I had planned the trip, paid for the cabin, the groceries, even the matching rain jackets they wore for that picture. I wasn't tagged, but I didn't have to be. The caption was enough. By noon, there were a dozen comments. You were such good parents. Some kids just forget where they came from. We raised ours right, thank God. I scrolled through them with a blank expression, heart steady but chest heavy. Later that day, Dad added his own post, just a shade more pointed. Raised a daughter with everything she needed. Thought she'd take care of us when the time came. Instead, she walked away. He tagged me. The next morning, Sable joined in. She didn't write a status. She didn't have to. She posted a filtered selfie on the porch swing with Mom, eyes glistening just enough to catch the light. The caption read, She doesn't deserve this. But I'll keep showing up even when others don't. That's what family means. And then, of course, the screenshot $1,000 transferred via Venmo to Mom and Dad, labeled because love doesn't skip payments. The comments exploded. You're amazing, Sable. Your parents are lucky to have you. Wish my daughter was more like you. They were crafting their narrative bit by bit. They had the first word, the louder word. And I stayed quiet. Not because I was ashamed, not because I didn't have proof, but because I knew the truth would be drowned by the volume of their performance. They wanted sympathy. They wanted to be right. And above all, they wanted me to break character. I didn't, at least not yet. But that night, I sat down to write the words they weren't expecting. I had held back longer than anyone expected, not out of fear, just exhaustion. The truth sat in my throat like a stone too heavy to carry, too sharp to swallow. But that night, I opened my laptop and typed. I've stayed silent while my family turned this into a public story. I won't drag anyone, but I'll share what's mine. For 5 years, I financially supported my parents quietly without asking for recognition. I paid their mortgage, their utilities, their groceries, their repairs. I did it because I loved them, because I thought love meant stepping up without being asked. I never expected a thank you. I never expected anything. I paused, then kept going. Then I found out I'd been removed from the will. Everything, house savings, car insurance, was left to someone else. No conversation, no explanation, not even acknowledgement. So I made a choice to stop being used, to stop paying for a kind of love I never really received. If that makes me selfish, so be it. But I won't apologize for protecting my peace. I hit post and waited. The first responses came quickly. A high school friend messaged, "I always knew you carried more than people realized." Then, a coworker, "Proud of you for setting boundaries." But not all were kind. No matter what, you don't air family business online. Sounds like you're bitter you didn't get the money. Parents aren't perfect, get over it. I read every word. Some stung. Some landed like a small breath of validation. But mostly I felt lighter. Not vindicated, not triumphant. Just lighter. For the first time in this whole mess, I'd stopped hiding. And of course, that meant the next strike was coming. It arrived in the mail 4 days later, handwritten and sealed. It arrived on a Tuesday cream-colored envelope, cursive handwriting, the kind of thing people send when they want to seem gentle while delivering something sharp. I opened it slowly, careful not to rip the paper. Inside, Darren's script curved neatly across the page, every loop and flourish practiced deliberate. Dear Ilara, we're heartbroken that you've chosen distance over family. This has gone too far. The will is not permanent, you know that. It can change. But your public behavior has been deeply hurtful. Sable is doing her best to hold us together while you unravel everything. She's hurting too, though she hides it well. We're ready to move forward as a family, but you need to apologize publicly. Until then, we will be stepping back for our own emotional well-being. Love, Mom. Love, Mom. Not, I'm sorry, not. We didn't realize, not even, let's talk. Just a list of conditions dressed in civility. Forgiveness available, but only if I returned to my assigned role. The dutiful daughter. Quiet, generous, unthanked. I sat with the letter for a long time. Not angry, not surprised, just still. Then I folded it once, placed it back into the envelope, and filed it away in the same drawer that held the estate plan. I didn't reply. Because I finally understood something they never would. I wasn't the one who walked away. They built a system that was never meant to hold me, and when I stopped carrying it, they called it abandonment. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted compliance. And I wasn't offering that anymore. The silence that followed wasn't a punishment. It was peace. And for once, I let it stay. There were no more messages, no more guilt-laced texts, no more Facebook updates twisted into parables. Just silence. The kind that used to scare me. The kind I used to fill with errands and reminders and perfectly timed check-ins. But now it felt clean. I made coffee in the morning and drank it hot, not forgotten. I slept through the night without waking up to the panic of a parent's missed call or a flashing bank notification. My calendar had blank spaces, now wide, calm gaps where other people's needs used to live. Ria invited me to a ceramics class after work on a Thursday. "You don't have to be good," she said. "You just have to show up." So I did. I sat at a clay-streaked table, sleeves rolled up, fingers clumsy but focused. We laughed when my mug collapsed in on itself like a tired mushroom. I hadn't heard my own laugh in weeks. Not like that. After class, we walked to her car in the cool evening air, and I felt it something like the early stages of relief. Not joy. Not yet. But something real. That night, I came home, made tea, and stood by my window with the lights off. The city moved outside like it always had, but I felt different. Not emptied, not bitter. Just finally whole in the quiet. I whispered it to myself, barely audible but certain. They wrote me out, but I finally rewrote myself. The next morning, I opened my banking app and did what I should have done months ago. The old Venmo log was the first to go. I opened the app, scrolled past years of transfers labeled groceries, electric, copay, water heater, and hit delete. Then I opened my bank settings and canceled the auto payments tied to their accounts. For a second, I hesitated. Not out of guilt, just habit. That quiet reflex I'd built over years of filling in gaps without being asked. But this time I clicked confirm. 2 days later, I signed the lease. It was a modest cabin 2 hours from the city, tucked near a lake I'd only ever driven past on road trips. The kind of place that didn't come with responsibilities I didn't choose. The kind of place where silence meant rest, not punishment. Raya came with me the day I picked up the keys. She didn't ask questions. Just brought boxed takeout and a bottle of ginger beer and helped me drag my mattress up a narrow stairwell that smelled like pine and dust. We sat on the floor that first night, legs crossed, unpacked dishes still in the car. She asked gently, "You okay?" I nodded. "I think so," I said. "I think I will be." Later, after she left, I opened the folder I hadn't touched since the day I found it, the estate plan. I didn't read it again. I just placed it in the back of a drawer, shut it softly, and walked away. I didn't need to burn it. I didn't need to prove anything. I'd already done the only thing they never expected me to do. Leave. And mean it. They left me nothing. So I built something of my own.